everybody. Welcome back to another Three Girls, One Monthly Catch Up. We are going to be catching up for the month of April this time around. And just as always, talking about the tarot and oracle decks, books, TV and movies, and other big fun life events that we've had going on over the course of the month. And I think I am going first this time around. So we'll start with our first category, which is decks. The first deck that I spent time working with over the course of April is this deck, which is I talked a little bit about on a recent Three Girls One deck, but this one is called Enchanted Forest Felines. This deck is so cute. I really love it. I really enjoyed working with it. I have a trouble finding cat decks that really resonate with me, and I've been through so many cat decks and like tried every cat deck in the world. And so when I saw one that just really struck me, and I just saw it on YouTube, I had never heard of it before. It is mass market. It's a Llewellyn deck, but it comes like in a nice little magnetic box as opposed to the big giant Llewellyn boxes, which is amazing. And it has nice matte cardstock, but it's really lovely. And it's just got this like sweet storybook cats vibe. They've renamed all of the suit symbols in ways that are, again, very cute, a very like forest cat kind of themed. So like the cups are saucers, pentacles are mushrooms, swords are dandelions, and the wands are branches. And it's just, I don't know, it's really cute. It has this cute kind of colorful storybook quality to the artwork. I really like this Three of Dandelions is so cute because it's like dandelions sticking in a heart that's like a ball of yarn heart. I don't know. It's really adorable. And I thoroughly enjoy it. So this was a really fun one for me to work with. And so that was one of them. And then I also kind of like got on a deck modification kick in April. Decks that I had been meaning to modify, I finally got around to basically. And like, once I get into it, I kind of enjoy the process of modifying decks. But the other deck that I modified, and as a result of that did end up working with a bit, is my new efflorescent tarot.
Yeah.
Which
to trim that down.
Yeah, which I trimmed down, and I think I did a pretty darn good job of trimming it. And it's so much more manageable now. Like the size is so easy to manage now. It shuffles really well, and I'm just really happy with how it turned out. I just left a tiny little like sliver of white border, but mostly just trimmed it down to the artwork. The backs still look really good, even with it trimmed down that way. And I'm so happy with how it turned out. So it's like, I love this deck, and I've always used it a fair amount, but now I have this just super nicely sized, extremely usable version, and I'm so happy with it. So I'm really excited about now having this nicely trimmed efflorescent tarot. So that's the other one that I did work with a little bit, not a ton, but I did do some readings with it because I was so excited to have this nicely trimmed copy.
Yeah, April was for me a little bit like bumpy tarot wise as well, like deck wise. I was just kind of all over the place. Usually it's like, if I'm not in the mood for one deck, I'll just switch it out with another and we're fine. But like I was constantly kind of just switching around and not being able to settle. I've already mentioned before and actually shown in a recent video and talked about that I was working with the Fairies Oracle. And ultimately, that is not going to stay.
Right.
We did not get along. That was going to be my dedicated deck to use and try out for April. And we just, we weren't meant to be. So yeah, we just weren't meant to be. And I had paired that with like Hanson Roberts just as something easy and, nothing too laborious. And then, what else did I do? Yeah, I then, similar to what you were talking about, Heather, in our live, when you're just like you want to actually lean in to the fuckery that is all around us. Like I was having those feelings especially last month. Like all of 2025 has just been a shit show, honestly. That's very directly, affected facets of my life. And so, and there's still so many unknowns. So, and it was one particular point where I'm just like, I need a rage deck, you know. And one of my go-to rage decks is Murder of Crows.
Hmm.
However, when I first started using it, another card creased.
No.
No.
Yeah, and so that whole like that deck, it has so many creased cards. Like that card stock, it hates me. It just, and you know, I put a lot of work into modifying that deck and color,
Mhm.
but that pissed me off so much. I'm like, well, fuck you. I'm not using you. I'm just not. So I'm like, what other deck kind of, you know, validates what I'm feeling right now? And actually, I went for one that I wouldn't have originally categorized as a rage deck, but it turned out to be quite a nice one, which is the Hush Tarot.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, because normally, you know, in other instances, I have not used it in that capacity, but like this actually, it worked out quite nicely. And I did modify this. I did resequence it. If you want to know more about that, there is a video on my channel. But yeah, I was just like, yeah, no, this really tracks. This really speaks to the rotting, corrupt, fetid like conditions of like what I'm dealing with right now. It's like you know, and also there's beauty there. There's beauty in this deck too, as
Mhm.
you know, reminders to not stay too long in that place. So that's a nice balance. But essentially, I felt like this was a deck. You know, we talk about decks that meet us where we are, and this was a deck that at that particular point in that month really met me where I was.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, just like, oh, just this heaping pile of earthly garbage. You know, it's just like that's what I'm, you know, and it's like, yes, yes. So, but then also moments of beauty and gratitude at what things I still do have and what's
Mhm.
in my control. Um, so yeah, this turned out to be an excellent rage deck. It was the Hush Tarot that saved me, took over.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. Now part of like my rage deck collection. And then another deck that I decided to work with was the Heavenly Bodies Astrology
Hmm.
deck. And I just decided to just randomly use this one because I needed something, you know, pretty. And then also I just wanted to give it a go at just using this as a flat out oracle deck,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and not as like a learning tool for astrology. So just use it solely for the purpose of oracle, and that was fun actually. So did that for a couple weeks, and yeah, it's a very pretty deck.
Mhm.
And maybe if I use this enough, maybe some things will sink in more permanently. Tough to say, but
Mhm.
in the meantime, it's nice to have this. And of course, I used the guidebook with it, so that was a very kind of like low stakes, nice, lovely time. And I think that's really it. But also, I wanted to say, well, first of all, I wanted to thank Sarah for the idea of making my deck sacrifice a tag, and because that was April, that was the end of April, wasn't that?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and thank you to everybody who decided to make a VR. That was like so much fun, and some of y'all went really hard. Like the stakes were really high in your VRs. It was like very stress inducing and a joy list to watch. So yeah, I do have a playlist of that, and just a lot of gratitude, a lot of enjoyment in watching those video responses.
Cool. So I did I worked with a couple of different decks. I worked with some decks and then I changed halfway through the month. So the first half of the month, I'm really like lately I've been really like thinking about spirituality and my spirituality and what I believe and how that's changing and how and all of that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to work with decks that kind of have that kind of spiritual vibe for me. So I worked for the first half of the month with the Unfolding Path Tarot,
Mhm.
which to me is like this deck goes so well with the Lightseers Tarot, but I always feel like the Lightseers Tarot is really earthy and
Mhm.
like I want to say mundane, but not in like
I know what you mean. Yeah.
you know what I mean? And this one is much more like spirit, like the spiritual side of the
Mhm.
same. kind of thing, despite the fact they're by completely different artists and creators, but they feel like very similar. So I worked with this at one for the first half of the month, and I do really like this deck. I do. There is just, I prefer the Lightseers. The Lightseers is my preference of those two, but there's just so much beauty in this deck. And then I paired it with a deck which is an Oracle deck, which has a completely different vibe altogether, but still has a very kind of spiritually feel for me, and that is the Believe Your Own Magic deck. And there's something about the combination of the art styles that just really went well together in a way that I wasn't expecting. So this one has such a, I don't know if cartoony is the right word, is the word that I'm looking for, maybe more like graphic novel, comic booky kind of style of art, and this one definitely doesn't have. But they complemented each other really well. And in terms of the messages that I was getting from them, and the way the cards that I was drawing, they just really worked. They really, really worked for me this month in a way that was a pleasant surprise, because spirituality has been a difficult thing for me over the last few months. And so I needed something that kind of, I want to say grounded me back in it, but neither of them are particularly grounding decks, but I mean, it makes sense to me. And part of that is just not really being connected with tarot so much over the last, I don't know, we've all said something very, very similar. So I'm trying to find fun ways to just reconnect with my decks. And so I decided for the second half of the month, for something completely different, I was going to pick the Oracle deck and the Tarot deck that I worked with randomly using a random number generator and just giving all of my decks a number. And so I ended up working with, which was lovely, the Crystal Tarot Unicorn, which, man, this deck is so fun. It's just so fun. It's so like, there's just, you cannot, unless you are soulless. No judgment. You can't look at this deck and not smile. It's just so candy and like, oh, it's just such a fun deck. But then it ended up, because I did it randomly, it ended up being paired with Oracle of the Shapeshifters, which has a totally different vibe.
I kind of love that though. I kind of love it.
That's fun, actually. That's like, yeah.
It really was. So, I mean, this one is much darker and it's much more like weird and, you know, big-eyed girls and weird-looking creatures. And I'm like, you know what? Something about this is just so enjoyable. It's so enjoyable, and I'm having so much fun with these two decks that I would never have paired together by myself. I wouldn't have thought of it. So yeah, I had actually the second half of the month, I had a lot of fun. I had so much fun with tarot. So
great.
It was a good month overall.
Well, our next topic is books. And so I just have like 3 to talk about, I think, that I enjoyed in the month of April. So I finally, it's been on my list for freaking ever, read The Three-Body Problem by, I'm going to do my best to pronounce it. I think it's Liu Cixin is how it's supposed to be pronounced. And, you know, this is obviously like a very, very well-known sci-fi novel. It's been out for a while. There's been a TV series based on it. And it's a really, really fascinating book by a Chinese author. It takes place in China. There's aspects of the book like going all the way back to the Cultural Revolution and how that shapes like scientific inquiry and how it shapes the lives of some of the main characters in the book. The fact that they have actually, you know, survived the Cultural Revolution and you know, the sort of suppression of science and intellectualism that took place in China during that period of time. And then, you know, it basically brings you forward into the present day where I don't want to spoil anything, because if anybody reads it, like, you know, it's really interesting as you actually figure out what's going on. But there's a variety of different people who are different types of scientists who are exploring the three-body problem, which, you know, is something, if you're familiar with in physics, it's basically like when you have three bodies in space all interacting with each other via gravity, it creates almost a completely chaotic system that can't be predicted by just about any kind of mathematical model. And for some reason, solving that becomes a big deal. Like, that's as far as I will go in terms of explaining the premise of the book. But suffice it to say, there's space, there's physics, there's math, there's a computer game that the different characters wind up playing that kind of plays out some of what the main theme of the book ends up being. And it was really, really interesting. I also read River of Silver by Shannon Chakraborty, which is a book of like short stories, small vignettes, like revisiting certain characters in the world of The City of Brass, the David Bad trilogy, which I loved that trilogy. It was one of those things where it was just like a little trip back into a world that I had greatly enjoyed being in. And so I really enjoyed that. And then a third book that I read that I don't even know quite how to explain how I felt about it was the book Several People Are Typing, which is a book that takes place entirely via Slack conversations between workers at this company. And one of the workers like hasn't been showing up in person to the office and keeps trying to explain to people that it's because he has been sucked into Slack and now he only exists in Slack. Like his body is just like comatose in his apartment and he only is conscious within the world of Slack. And all of his coworkers are like, haha, like, yeah, great. The hilarious explanation for why you haven't been coming in person, like none of them believe him. And it's just this whole tale of like how he tries to explain, like tries to like recruit other workers to like help him out. There's all these subplots going on with all the other different workers at the company. And like, there's the Slack bot, like when you ask for help on Slack, there's like a Slack bot that answers you and the Slack bot becomes a character in the story also. Like it's really light. Like it's just a kind of fluffy, fun read, like it just like, haha, corporate work and is really dehumanizing, I guess is the theme, but it's quite funny. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a super quick read because it's all just like Slack conversations. So it's not, it's not a lot of like extensive prose whatsoever. So it's a quick read and it was fun. And yeah.
So one book that I finished in April that I had actually had since like 2023 and I just got around to is the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, who is known for the Hunger Games series. And so this book follows one of those characters, Coriolanus Snow. We find him as like a student about ready to graduate from high school and enter college. And so basically, this book shows how he's involved in the Hunger Games as it exists at that point in time. And then the series of events that kind of set the pace and the trajectory toward the President Snow that we know and loathe in the Hunger Games series. I enjoyed the first part of the book. And then, getting into the second part of the book, I started to honestly lose a little steam because we know that Professor Snow is a bad man and an asshole. And so I will say, in my personal opinion, it's kind of like, while the story was, at least the first part, felt entertaining, it's just kind of like, well, I know where this is going. And this character just isn't very redeeming, and so it just kind of, it kind of slowed down for me. And then the climax just pissed me off. It was like I was watching the last season of Game of Thrones again. I'm like, how did you get here? Like,
God.
Oh, okay. So where was the character and plot development to get from point C and now you're at point Y? Like, it's just like, I almost felt like, oh, okay, so she was on deadline and she needed to hurry the fuck up and finish this book. And so she just, so that just really annoyed me. Just really annoyed me. Because like the same with Game of Thrones, it's not like I would have necessarily been opposed to the way things had turned out. Had it been properly developed and we see that ramping up of, motivation and, step by step in the plot sequence. But no, in my opinion, I didn't get that. So, yeah. So then another book that I finished was Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. And this one, so it's based off a real reform school. Oh gosh, what's the name? A Dozier school that was in Florida that they closed down only in 2011. It hasn't been that long, and it was running since like 1900. Did they finally close it down in 2011 due to all of the allegations of just like abuse and just rape and just all of these atrocious events and misconduct. So it follows this young Black man. He's like getting ready to enter college, and he's has a bright future ahead of him. It's in the Jim Crow era, so like 1960s. He's mistakenly accused of being accomplice to like some auto theft. So, and then so he's put into what's called Nickel Academy, which is a reform school for boys. And so then you're just witness to what he goes through himself, what the other boys go through, and the narrative switches back and forth between this character, Elwood Curtis is his name, Elwood from the 1960s being in Nickel Academy to Elwood in the 2000 or early 2000s. Just struggling with all of these memories and basically PTSD, right, from suffered living there. So I mean, it was well crafted. I mean, it wasn't super long, thank goodness, just because of the gravity of the topic, and there is like a surprise kind of turn of events that I wasn't expecting, and so that was. It also like kind of added to like the intensity of things, and it's an important read because this is based on true life events.
So I read a lot in April, actually, a lot more than I thought I did, but I won't talk about everything. So I read, what did I enjoy? I read We Solve Murders, which is Richard Osman's new series. So I don't know if either of you have read any of the Thursday Murder Club. Which are fantastic. But then this is his new series that he's writing, and it's about a retired police officer and his stepdaughter, who is a personal guard for like rich people. An influencer is sent off somewhere to do a job, and he gets killed, and they somehow get involved in the investigation of what's happening because this influencer is connected in some way to the daughter-in-law. Sorry, she's his daughter-in-law. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was really hard not to compare it to the Thursday Murder Club, which I've read like 4 books in that series. So there's characters that, you really love and have really connected to and stuff, and trying to put that out of my mind and treat this as a completely new thing was a challenge to begin with, but I had a really good time, and it's a series I'm definitely going to want to read on in. It's very British crime. It's very British crime drama, which is, it's a bit cozy and a bit like ridiculous and Midsummer Murdery, and it was great. I did really enjoy it. I audio read a book called Don't Let the Forest In, which I'd been waiting for ages. It is young adult, and I always give young adult characters a lot more grace than I give adult characters. But oh my god, like these it's 2 boys. Well, one of these a girl and 2 boys because one of them is a twin, and they go back to school, and one of the boys likes to write stories and the other boy likes to draw the characters from stories. He writes horror stories like monster fairy tale stories and things, and the other boy likes to draw the characters from the stories, and those characters have come to life and are attacking the school and attacking the boys, and they're having to go out and fight them and all of this kind of stuff. And underneath all of that, one of the boys is secretly in love with the other boy. but the way they spoke in this book was ridiculous. Like, did either of you watch Dawson's Creek?
Yeah, I've seen.
You know how in Dawson's Creek it was so overly emotional? It was like teenagers would never speak like that.
Right.
Take that and times it by about 150.
Oh, geez.
And that is how these boys spoke, the entire book. And the story was the thing that kept me going, because I having to listen to it on audiobook as well. I was like, no one talks like this. No one. Even like emo, angsty teenage boys do not talk like this. And I was an emo, angsty teenage girl who spent a lot of time with emo, angsty teenage boys. They do not talk like this. No one talks like this. And then the end was so disappointing. Like, there were so many things set up in the book, and I love an ambiguous ending, but not to the point where nothing is explained and nothing is resolved, and none of the plot points that were set up are in any way resolved or discussed or, you know, mentioned. It was such a disappointment. But and then I read The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig. I've not read any. He's a horror writer. I've not really read from him before. I did get this as an ARC from NetGalley. So it's got a really like Stephen King's It vibe, in that you've got this. It's this group of teenagers go off in the woods together. They're like misfits, and they've come together because they don't really fit in anywhere else. And they go off into the woods together, and they discover this random staircase in the woods. It's just appeared in the woods, and they don't know where it's from. And one of them goes up the staircase and jumps off the top of it and disappears. And then the staircase disappears, and everybody thinks, because he was the most athletic and the most good at school and all of that kind of stuff, and it's set like that happens in the 90s when you had the satanic panic and all of those things. Everybody thinks that they murdered their friend, but they can't prove it. And then we jump to the future, like today's timeline, and through situations they end up going back to the woods and finding another staircase, climbing the staircase and jumping off the staircase, and then the story goes in a direction I was not expecting. And it was so good. Oh my god, it was a 5-star read for me. It was so good. It was scary. It was genuinely frightening in so many places. It was one of the books where I suddenly had a hang on moment, because there's a lot of body horror. And I always say I don't like body horror, and then when I look back at my favorite horrors of all time, they all have some element of body horror in them, and I'm like, maybe, but because it scares me and it freaks me out so much, I think that's why it works. It was like a literal haunted house story, but not really. The characters none of them are likable, but they're all real. They all felt really real, because they're all dealing with some level of trauma, not just from what happened to their friend, but stuff that comes out that happened in their lives as they grew up. And, you know, they'd all separated and they'd all come back together to try and solve this supernatural mystery, which is very It. Again, it's very Stephen King It. And it's something I love in horror. I love it. It was so good. It really was very, very good.
I was back on my BTS bullshit for a lot of April. But the kind of highlight thing that I have been watching, I haven't finished it yet, but I've watched most of it, is this show on Netflix called Kian's Bizarre B&B, which is a show that has one of the BTS members in it, Jin. And it's basically like, it's kind of a, I guess, common trope in Korean reality shows where, you know, a bunch of celebrities get together and like run a restaurant or run a hotel. You know, it's just kind of a thing that there's like lots of reality shows like that for some reason in Korea. And this is one where it's a B&B that's been created by this web cartoonist named Kian84, who's also like sort of a like YouTube personality and like is a host of some other shows in Korea. And he's just a really weird guy. And so the B&B that he designs is on a barge in the ocean, and it looks like it was designed by like Willy Wonka. Like you have to climb up a climbing wall to get into it because the only entrance is on the second floor. And then to get back down to the first floor, you have to go down a fireman's pole. And all of the beds are like hanging off the side of the building outside. Like they're all just like platforms sticking off the side of the building. And the whole thing is like bonkers insane. Like it just, and so then Jin from BTS, who's the eldest member of BTS, and then this other girl who I think she's an actress. I think she's from like the Korean version of SNL. They show up to help run this B&B, and it's total chaos, as you can imagine, because it's like an insane B&B, but then it's also like weirdly touching because obviously everybody who like signs up to go stay there is kind of aware that it's going to be a weird experience because of the guy who designed it. Like they're all familiar with him, and so they get there and it's all like very, I don't know, people have to just sort of like adjust to the nonsense because like that's what they're there for. And the only person who keeps the entire thing going is Jin. Like he's amazing. He's like superhuman and can do anything. And like I don't know, it was like really a fun watch, like very entertaining, weirdly touching at times. Like I don't know, like it was like it's fun. It's a fun show. If you're interested in why BTS is a successful group, just know that like the least serious member of BTS can like run a fucking Willy Wonka B&B like the military and is like amazing and can do, and like literally keeps the entire thing going with single-handedly pretty much. It's quite impressive actually. I also Andor season 2 started on Disney Plus, and that also the last 3 episodes I think come out on Tuesday, but I'm all the way done with the first 9 episodes. And Andor is so good. It's like from a writing and acting standpoint, it's easily the best Star Wars thing like ever made. Like it's really, really good. It's one of those things that like it's basically like an espionage and political intrigue story about the rebellion prior to the events of the first Star Wars film. Basically how the rebellion gets going, all of the like highly placed people from a standpoint of, government power, wealth, all that kind of stuff, who are secretly aiding the rebellion. And then, the people who are sort of the like on the ground, actual, rebellion spies and leaders. So, Cassian Andor, who is a rebel spy, who is one of the main characters in Rogue One, which came out, I think like 10 years ago, who's played by Diego Luna. And he's like the main character, but there are other characters that are like just as big as him in the show. And it's so good. It's so good. It's so well written. It's so well acted. Like it just makes Star Wars feel real. It makes you understand like a lot of the sort of like fairy tale aspects of Star Wars that are like, oh, there's this evil empire and then there's these rebels and everything. And this is like trying to ground the whole thing in reality. Like how could that really happen in the real world? Like how could this story actually work in reality? And like it's just so good.
Matt and I finally found an anime show that we got into and enjoyed, and so we finished the first season in April, and that is called The Apothecary Diaries. And it's based on, well, it's really trippy to me because I think the authors of the actual manga, they're Japanese, and the series, like they're speaking in Japanese, but it takes place in like a fictional Chinese like world, Chinese setting. So it's very like sensory confusion to me watching this because they're speaking in Japanese, but they're in Chinese garb, and it's like very much like Chinese setting. Anyway, so it's about this character named Mao Mao, and she's like around 17 or 18, and she lives in this village with her adoptive father, who's an apothecary, and she learns all the things that he knows about medicine and herbs and poisons and such. And she just like revels in it. She loves poisons. She loves like testing them out on herself, testing it out on her skin. Like she's an interesting character. And she gets kidnapped and sold, and like ends up like a servant in the Imperial Palace of all places. And so basically the episodes just kind of follow her and like mysteries, like palace mysteries and suspicious events that she helps like the head eunuch there to solve. There's this like head eunuch who is in charge of like that palace area, because it's mainly the concubines that live there. So we've got this eunuch who is then set up, of course, as Mao Mao's love interest. But what's great is that like Mao Mao is like so uninterested. Like she's, you know, she's not pining after him. Like she's not acting, you know, super like coquettish or anything. Like she genuinely like couldn't give less of a shit. And like she just wants to like eat poisons and test poisons and like make herbal medicines. And like she's more interested in like the medicinal aspects of things and that. So I really enjoy that about her character. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was that we went to see Sinners in the theater.
I really want to see that.
Yeah, which is a vampire horror movie. The main characters are, well, it's like two versions of Michael B. Jordan, basically. He plays twin brothers. So Zach. They're like bootlegging bros who are also like, you know, they've come back from like, I think they fought in the First World War or something like that. And they're like, they've done some criminal stuff in the meantime, and they're, you know, they've come back to, I think like Mississippi Delta area. They want to open like what is it, like a juke joint, I guess, you know, and so they have every, you know, they have the liquor, and they, you know, are able to gather like peeps that they know from the area, the locals and stuff that they're already friends with, and really set this up really fast. And they also have a younger cousin, a young man who is a very talented musician, and also the son of a preacher. So his nickname is like Preacher Boy or something like that. And so they recruit him to help out. And some vampire shit goes down. There are vampires, and like, you know, the rest of it is just vampire goodness. And it was just, I personally really enjoyed it. I thought it was smart. I thought it was at times funny, witty. Like I thought, and just, I also love how they really kept a lot of the vampire lore very traditional. These are vampires that do burn in the sunlight. These are vampires that do not like garlic. These are vampires that are killed, you know, by a stake to the heart, that kind of thing. So I was like, oh, this is great. You know, it's just, yeah, it was really, really well done.
So I watched one series. I watched The Stolen Girl on Netflix, which felt like a Harlan Coben series, but it wasn't, surprisingly. So this is about a woman who is late to pick up her daughter from school, and when she gets there, there's another woman and her child there talking to the teacher, and apparently the two girls are friends, so she encourages her daughter to go off for a play date. And then the mother of the friend phones and says, oh, can they do a sleepover? And she goes to the house to drop off her stuff. And then the mother is supposed to bring the girl back the next day, and they don't turn up. And that when they go to the house to pick her up, they discover that it is actually a Airbnb. It's like a holiday rental, and the people who were there have checked out that morning, and they've gone, and her daughter has been stolen by this woman, basically. And then all the episodes after that is about why and what's happened, and, you know, stuff that happened in the past that connects to why this is happening in the future. Well, not in the future, in the present. And there's a journalist who's very like, this is like, why your daughter? What, you know, and it's for what it was really good. I mean, it was a pretty generic mystery thriller type series. If you like that kind of, I don't know if you've seen any of the Harlan Coben series that Netflix really enjoys putting out, like The Stranger and stuff like that, but it's that kind of mystery vibe. So it was fun. I think it was 4 or 5 episodes, and I think I watched it over a couple of days. So I did 2 episodes one day and the rest the next day or something. And then I watched a film on Netflix. I watched a Korean film called Officer Black Belt. And this is about a young guy who is just like a really nice, affable guy. He is he likes to be good at stuff. So he's a good fencer, and he's done like 3 different types of martial arts that he's really good at and stuff. And he's coming home from delivering for his dad's chicken shop one day, and he sees 2 guys fighting, and he helps one guy out and discovers that the guy that he helped was a probation officer, or he's a martial arts probation officer. So he finds out that all the probation officers have a martial arts expert assigned to them to help them with difficult criminals who are on probation. But the guy that he helped is out of action for a while because he's been injured. So he decides to step in and temporarily do his job while he's out. If you watch the trailers for this movie, it looks like it's kind of like an action comedy type film. It absolutely isn't. No. It's a proper action film with actually quite a dark storyline. It goes in a very dark direction. And there were moments where I'm not really good with like proper hardcore violence, and there were moments I had to pause it and take a break because I was like, okay, I just need a minute. Like, I need to just allow my brain to process that and my heart to stop doing that. And like, but it was very, very good. It was very good, but it was intense sometimes. And I think it's a shame because the trailer doesn't do it justice for what it actually ended up being. And then I didn't really watch it. And I'm watching 911. For some reason, I have decided that 911 is my new binge watching show that I've never seen before. And I started it in the middle of April, and I'm halfway through season 4. So that's going very well.
So our last topic is just wild card, other stuff going on in our lives. The only main thing for me is that I have been looking for a 9-to-5 job. That's something that I have been getting back into. I'm at the point where I need to go back to a regular 9-to-5, and so I did a fair amount of like interviewing and stuff like that during the month of April, and I found a job, so that is great. I didn't actually find the job until May, but I might as well announce that now. It's like rather than waiting till next month. So anyway, so yeah, other than that, like I had an Easter with family. That was nice. We had some people in from out of town and some other stuff, but not a lot else going on in April, other than just trying to get a job, but I succeeded. So I'm happy.
April was difficult, but I feel like I'm going to be saying that for a while yet, until maybe things settle down here in the US. So April was no different from the month before, and the month before it felt. But it was again nice to. It was another month of where I got to socialize a little bit, both offline with friends and virtually, and that was really like nice support to have. As I was just kind of going through it in April, and then of course hobby wise, just trying to distract myself with hobbies. And so I definitely went hard with like the doll customizing again. And I think I've kind of like reached the end of my doll customizations for now, because like how many dolls can I possibly make, first of all? How many dolls can I possibly do? And really it was about like using up the parts that I had. And kind of finishing those off, and and in terms of like the ideas and inspiration, I think they've all been actualized. So I'm gonna kind of cut it, just take a break from it, and maybe I'm sure I'll come back to it at some point. But yeah, it was very kind of like doll customizing heavy month. And the last doll, I'll show you the last doll that I ended up making is this one right here, and I've named her Frankie, short for Frankenstein, because she's literally pieced together from different parts that don't match. Like they don't like her scalp is like meant to be for like a lighter skinned, and then her body is like 2 shades darker than her. It does, and I don't care. I just don't. This was what I had left. Yeah. This is what I decided to do. So, and I love her. I love her. I decided to go with like a more like goth type of look.
Mhm.
So definitely leaning into like, a lot of the black.
Mhm.
And so you got the dark color here. I did choose a lighter color to match like her hair. Of course, purple. Hello. So yeah,
Mhm.
that was, that was a good time. And yeah, she will probably be the last for a while.
Yeah, I didn't really do much outside of the house in April. I don't know if I left the house all that much in April. I got really into Korean again in April. So you
Mhm.
know how you go in stages where you really focus on something and then you're not. But was a lot of listening to podcasts and
Mhm.
reading and that kind of stuff. And it has been nice to be at a level where I can do that now
Mhm.
and it not be quite so challenging. But so I really went hard with Korean studying in one way or another throughout April. Other than that, like I say, lots of that's probably why I read so much. I read a lot in April. I think I finished like 9 books in
Mhm.
total in April and watched a show and that kind of, the stuff that we've already talked about. So yeah, I took a week off over Easter and did nothing,
Mhm.
and it was wonderful. I had a wonderful time. I went to the library and I went out with the dog and it was lovely. It was really, really nice, but nothing exciting.
So anyway, thanks so much everybody for joining us for another Three Girls One Monthly Catch Up. We will see you again in about a month when we do our catch up for May. And we are also going to be having our Three Girls One Book on May 24th, which is a Saturday. It's going to be on my channel at noon. Same as a normal Three Girls One Deck. And we'll be talking about Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. So hope you'll join us for that. And in the meantime, thanks so much. Have a great one. Bye-bye.